Hi, this is Dr. Cook. So we are now in week 5, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Career Exploration Report. So let's look at the guidelines together. So remember, the purpose of this particular paper and report is to research a career. And it's done in 2 parts. The first part you have probably finished or are getting ready to finish. You should have this done by the end of the week, and that's to have conducted the interview. Some people still haven't submitted their interview questions for me to look at, and some people haven't revised your questions. So please get this done as soon as possible, because you can't conduct the interview until you have the questions approved, which means then you can't submit any of the later assignments until you have your questions approved. So please do that as soon as possible. And again, you need to make an appointment with someone that you're going to interview like as soon as possible, because this has to happen this week, because next week we will be moving on to like the next part of the assignment. So if look at this, again, this does give you some information. There are 2 sources. One source is using what's called the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and that's with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. And the second source is the interview. So it says that I need to approve. If you're only using the interview and the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, then I really don't need to approve it. But if you're going to do something different, then I should see it. Keep in mind that your word count is bigger. You should have headings on this paper, just like you were supposed to have on the last paper. This is a report, and first person and third person are allowed. Again, you can't use you, that's not allowed, but you can use first and third person. So with the questions, I said that you really should have categories, because in the report itself you're going to break it down into sections, and so the categories of the questions will help you with the sections of the paper. So I've started approving the questions, even though some people don't have it broken down into the sections or to the categories, but I said make sure that you do that, because when it comes time for the paper you need to have that organized. So there is an introduction with a purpose statement. Then you'll have your body, which is 4 to 6 body paragraphs, because you're kind of looking at 4 to 6 ideas or categories in the paper. And then you have your conclusion. So let's go to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So type in Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and then you want to choose bls.gov. And this is what you are looking at the moment. So let me put in a job that probably none of you would do. So if you go to the search bar up here, and let's put in food service manager. All right, and then food service manager, that's the job. All right, so here we go. This is all the information that you need to know about food service managers, and it's broken down actually into some of the categories that you might have in your paper. What do they do? So maybe like the normal job, work environment, how to become one, pay, job outlook. There's also, let's say you don't want to have that job. You're looking for something particular. You can click on similar occupations, and it'll give you a list of occupations that are similar. So your source in this case is going to be a government agency, which is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So your author is going to be the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And I'm going to give you a handout to help you with this. Then you're going to look for the date. And here we have last modified, so we're going to use this particular date. So it will be 2019, September 4. And then depending on which page you're on, which tab you're on, that is the particular title. So the job is food service manager, then you're going to put a colon, and then, for instance, we have summary, or what food service managers do, work environment. These become the subtitles, and they're going to be used in colon. And I'm going to show you an example of how to do this in a minute. After you have that, of course, you're going to have the source. The source is here at the top. It's the United States Department of Labor. They're the government agency that sponsors this. And then lastly, you're going to click the URL. Now, each time you go to a page, if you look up here at the top, we see tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. Each of these is a separate entry on your references page. So if you quote something from the summary, you need to fill out Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the date, food service managers, summary. Then when you get to the URL, you're going to copy this particular URL. Let's say now you want to talk about how one becomes a food service manager, and you find some information here. Then you're going to make this a separate entry on your work site, on your references page, and we have a separate URL. So they're pretty much going to look alike, they're going to look similar, but you are going to have separate entries on your references page. I'm going to give you an example of what it should look like, and I'm going to send everybody a handout that goes through how to format the references page and how to write this in the paper in terms of your citations, because there is a particular way to do it. But very short, if we're using 3 sources from this one particular site, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, if they all have the same, they're going to have the same date. Let's just double check. Yeah, September 4th. They're all going to have the same date. So when you write the year, you're going to write 2019 A, if you're using this one, B, C, D, etc. So let me show you now what it actually will look like. So I'm going to send this along with the video, but everything we talked about so far is here. So I actually use the food service manager page, and depending on where it comes in your paper, that's going to be what you're going to label then A, B, and C. So how you're going to write it, of course, is food service managers, and then your tab is going to be written after that. So again, the author of this is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So here we go, Bureau of Labor and Statistics. We have then the date. Now this date may be different, so you have to look and see when your page has been updated. But we're all going to have the same year and the same month and day. So you're going to put 2019 A, food service managers, and we're going to go back to here, A, food service managers, how to become one. Food service managers, how to become a food service manager. Now, when you go back to the actual site, the tab is how to become one, but it's really called how to become a food service manager. And that's what you want to put on this sheet here. This goes in italics, right? That's very important. And it's still written like a sentence because we have a colon, and the subtitle, the first word after the colon, is capitalized. The author, I remember, said, if you go to the top of this site, it's the United States Department of Labor. That's the publisher, actually, United States Department of Labor. And then we take the URL, and you see here we have tab 4, tab 1, tab 2. So if you put in the correct information, you should be able to click each one of these, and it will take you to tab 1. Here we have our summary. tab 2, what do they do? So it actually works. So you want to make sure that you have that. So again, on your references page, it's still all Bureau of Labor and Statistics. You just label A, B, and C. Food service managers, again, that is the title here. And the subtitle is what's underneath. So the subtitle is basically what is on each of the tabs. And again, you write all of this in italics, and you capitalize only the first word and the first word after the colon. United States Department of Labor. So this is what your references page is going to look like. The other thing that you're going to have on the reference page is the interview, or actually you're going to have the interview, but you're not putting the interview on the references page. You're only putting that in the paper. And I'll show you a couple of examples of how you would talk about your interview in the paper, because you do want to give credit to the person whom you interviewed. Here at the bottom of this sheet that I'm sending you is how to do an embedded citation. Now remember, one of the things that people were having difficulty with on the APA was the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So that's a long name, just like the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So the first time you write it out, you write out the whole thing. So in our APA skills assessment, it was the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Then you have a bracket and you write CDC in the middle and then close the bracket. Well, you're doing the same thing here. The first time you write out Bureau of Labor and Statistics, then in brackets put BLS. After the first time, you only have to put BLS. So this means the first time you use it. So it doesn't have to be the A, the B, the C, first time for each. It just has to be one time. So basically what you're doing is trying to tell a person, okay, what does BLS stand for? Well, the first time you write it out so people understand, and after that you simply write BLS. You don't use any italics here, and you don't use any brackets in the actual embedded citations. So for the interview, here's the information at the bottom for the interview. So when you always use the first initial and the last name of the person, comma, personal communication, comma, and the date that you actually interviewed the person. So let's look at the sample paper and point out a couple things on the sample paper that I really want you to know. Let me go through the sample paper and APA format again, because again this was on the APA skills assessment, or actually on the first paper, and some people were doing it the wrong way. So things have changed. You don't have anything in the header anymore other than the page number. Do make sure the entire paper is Times New Roman 12 font. And then you have your title of the paper in bold, and this is almost like, I would say, centered in the top half of the paper. It's not all the way at the top, but it's not in the middle. Your name, underneath your name, English Department, Delaware Technical Community College, English 102, composition and research, and then my name. And you're supposed to use the first and last name, so it's Mark Cook. And because I have a doctorate, you need to say Dr. Mark Cook. And it's Mark with a C, Cook with an E. And underneath that is the date. At the top of the second page, again, nothing in the header other than the page number. You do have the title. So the same title that you have on your first page, you have on the second page, and in bold at the top. Then we have a little introductory paragraph, and you'll see here that the person did say I, so I is appropriate in this particular part of the paper. So I would like you to read through this on your own so that you have a really good idea of what you're going to then write. You do mention the interview and the person who you've interviewed, and you should also mention the Occupational Outlook Handbook from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, because those are our sources. We basically want to have mention our sources early on. All right, so when we're talking about educational requirements, the rest of the paper, you're going to use a combination of what you learned in the interview and what you found online. And so it's not a whole section on just the interview or a whole section on the article. It is really a combination of both. So this person then begins with Mr. Garcia, and Mr. Garcia also believes that having this degree helped him. So you do not need to quote Mr. Garcia. Make everything paraphrased. Just say what you learned and what Mr. Garcia or whoever the person is gave you the information. Don't directly quote them. But after this information, you then use your parenthetical citation. So here we have what it would look like. We have J. Garcia, comma, personal communication, comma, February 17th, comma, 2019. And now we switch to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, more prestigious hotels and restaurants prefer managers with at least one post-secondary education. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS 2019A. So we don't put the title of anything in here because we have an author. The author actually is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, BLS. So for citations, you always put the author and the year, and then if it's a direct quote, you use a page number or paragraph number. I strongly suggest in this paper that you avoid quote, direct quotes, and paraphrase everything. So we see that this is taken from BLS 2019A, and if we were to go to the back, we see that A is how to become a food service manager. All right, and so we have another one, BLS. So here we have an example. The first time you write out the entire name in brackets BLS, and now every time after that you see it's just BLS and then 2019A or 2019C, etc. Every time you really write about Mr. Garcia. Now, when you're writing about the person, if you have several sentences together, you put the citation at the end of all of the sentences. So if you have 3 or 4 sentences, all from information that you got from your interview, at the back of that you would put your personal communication and the date. Don't put it next to every sentence because that gets redundant, and really all of the sentences have that same information. Keep in mind that you do have headings in this paper. So we have educational requirements, jobs duties, jobs advantages and disadvantages, communication, all right? So you want to include those in this particular paper as well. You have until next Friday, not this coming one, but next Friday, to have your skills assessment finished. I'm not going to accept anything after that because I don't feel like grading past week 6 the APA skills assessment. So again, you can submit it as many times as you want. I just want to have it within the next week and a half. Some of you have gotten approval, and some people haven't even submitted a revision yet. You also need to have approval of your questions. So remember, no yes, no questions, and they should be divided and broken up into categories. You want to have your questions then done as soon as possible. Conduct your interview. After you've conducted your interview, begin the research process on looking at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and looking at one particular career. So you need to pick one career, and that's what you're going to research. If you have not conducted your interview yet, but it's set up for later dates, hopefully by next Monday the latest, then begin the career research part on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. All right, so don't wait. You should be doing something, whether it is writing up the interview or writing up and getting the research. That's really important that you start that now. So there's not a lot due this week, but you want to get this done. There is a planner that you should be completing for the career research report, and I'm going to show you that now. So we are in week 5. If you go under week 5, you will see the pre-writing or the planner. And this is what you're going to complete. This is actually due next week on Thursday. So you have over a week to get this finished, but that's why you want to start your research now and begin filling this out. So it does have 2 parts to it. The first part at the top deals with your sources, and one of your sources is your interview. That's a primary source, so make sure you fill out that information completely because you are going to include that in the introductory paragraph of your paper. The second part deals with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. That's your secondary source. And you're going to have to put this information in a couple times because remember, you are using multiple tabs in this. And so the retrieval information or the URL is going to be different. And then it's broken down into your categories. So each component is a category. So communication is one of the components. And if you've asked about written and oral communication, you're going to fill that out. Now, when you're filling out this part of your planner, keep in mind that maybe the person you interviewed gave you some information as well, and you also have information from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So you're going to include both sources, both pieces of information in your planner. So it's not just all about the interview or all about the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It is a combination of both for each one of these components. Hopefully you got enough information from the interview and from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So I would look once again at the sample paper very carefully, see how that's worded, see how it's done. I'm going to attach the handout that I showed you, which shows you everything about how to do the proper citations and how to work on the references page. Use your sample, also has a references page in there, and use that for APA formatting as well. If you have any questions, be sure to email me and have a good week.